Hey everyone, so what we're working on today in algebra is function machines, and basically with function machines all you're trying to do is plug in an input, do whatever math is there, and then get an accurate output, and that output then becomes the next input. So that's what it's all about. In problem 1-3 in your book, you're supposed to figure out the order of the machines. So I'll tell you something, it's actually really frustrating and hard sometimes to figure out that order. If you've already done it, awesome, and you can just check your work with mine. If you haven't figured out the order yet, don't worry about it, I will show you the order. Really the main thing is that I want you to be able to plug in a number for X and then accurately solve it. That's really the goal here, okay? So to get us started, in part A, the first function machine we're going to use is y equals negative 2x plus 34. And I got to double check. Sorry, I got to double check what is our first input. I forgot to write that down where I could just see it. Okay. So when you put 15 in, you get negative 6 for the last output. Okay, so we're gonna put 15 in and we're trying to get to negative 6 for the final output. All right, so we'll start with negative 2 times 15 plus 34. So negative 2 times 15 is negative 30 plus 34. So negative 30 plus 34 is 4. Please always use a calculator when doing negative numbers, because a lot of times that's just a quick mistake you can make. I'm just depending on doing it in my head right now, which is not always the best idea, but I'm just trying to, demo it kind of quick. So when you're doing these on your own, please make sure you're using your calculator so that you don't just make silly mistakes as you go. Okay, so the next machine that we're going to use is y equals x minus 2 squared, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this 4 that we got and we're going to plug it in. That's going to be our next input. Okay, so we go y equals, keep those parentheses there. Remember, PEMDAS, order of operations, you always do what's in the parentheses first. So 4 minus 2 is 2. Keep that squared there. 2 squared is 4. We have another 4. We keep getting 4s. Let me see, yeah, I was gonna make sure you could still see it. So our next machine we're gonna use is y equals negative absolute value of 3x. If you haven't had a chance to review what absolute value means, it just means how many spaces away from 0 this number is. So if it's a negative number, it's just becomes positive. If it's positive, it stays positive. That's all it is. It's actually pretty easy. Okay, so we got another 4, and that's going to be our next input. So you just plug it in like this. 3 times 4. And I'm using parentheses just because 3x means 3 times x, and parentheses mean times also, like a 3 next to your parenthesis, that means 3 times 4. So it just keeps it kind of nice and neat. Also, when you're using your calculator, if you just use parentheses, your calculator will automatically do multiplication. So that's why I did that. Let's see, equals negative absolute value, 3 times 4 is 12. The absolute value of 12 is 12. So, and then you put the negative in the end. So our output for that one is negative 12. And our last machine, I'm going to put it right here and draw a little squiggly line to keep them separate. The last one is y equals negative x over 3 minus 10. Just making sure you can see that. Yep. So our last answer was negative 12, so that's what we're going to plug in right here for that x. Okay, so it's negative 12, which is kind of confusing, right? So you have to write it all out. So that was negative x in our formula, and we had a negative 12 to plug in. So it's negative 12. Gotta have them both there. So negative 12 actually just becomes positive. There's a few different ways to think of it. It's kind of like you have a -1 times 12. -1 times -12 is 12. That's one way to look at it. Also, a lot of people just kind of get used to when you have a double negative, it becomes positive. So either way you want to look at it. It becomes positive 12 over 3 and then minus 10. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and then minus 10. And then 4 minus 10 is -6. And I don't know if you remember, but our whole goal was to start with a 15 as an input and then end up with a -6 as our final output. And we did it. So there you go. If you need to pause or rewind and rewatch a step, feel free. And if you're wondering how I knew that that's the order of the machines, it's because I solved it already. I didn't just like automatically pick the right ones. So yeah, that's the correct order of the machines. Just practicing putting your inputs in and getting the right output is really the goal here. So as long as you can do that, I'm not worried about you being the one who can figure out the order of the machines. All right, so if you need to pause, go for it. Otherwise, I'm gonna erase and do part B for you. All right, part B. One day I'll learn how to do fancy transitions on YouTube. I know how to do them on TikTok. I just don't know how to do it on YouTube. Anyway, okay, so for part B, our first machine we're gonna use is y equals negative absolute value of 3x. And let me just make sure I know what numbers I'm supposed to be using here. So what order will result in final output of 2 when the first input is 8? So we want to start with an input of 8 and get a final output of 2. Okay. So my very first input, I'm plugging the 8 in for that x right there, okay? Notice I use my parentheses again. I like to do that to keep it nice and neat. So negative absolute value, 3 times 8 is 24. The absolute value of 24 is just 24. And then you use this negative kind of as your last step. So that becomes negative 24. That's our first output. Our next machine is going to be y equals negative x over 3 minus 10. All right, so then we're going to plug in this negative 24 for that x. So again, we've got a double negative. Negative x, and the x is negative 24 over 3 minus 10. Okay, so one step at a time. Negative 24 is positive 24. Okay, 24 divided by 3 is 8. And then 8 minus 10 is negative 2. Okay, so that's our output for our second machine. Our third machine is y equals x minus 2 squared. And we're going to plug this negative 2 in right there for that x, okay? So parenthesis negative 2 minus 2. Okay, so negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. Notice that's still in the parentheses. Then negative 4 squared is like negative 4 times negative 4, which is positive 16. Okay. Our last machine we're going to use is y equals negative 2x plus 34. Okay, plugging the 16 in for x. So negative 2 times 16 plus 34. So negative 2 times 16 is negative 32 plus 34 is 2. All right, so we did it. So our very first input was 8, went in for this x, and then our very last output was 2. So we did part B correctly. Hopefully that helped you understand how to do inputs and outputs.